Jai Ho, my dear students, I am Ratnakar Suryamshi from SK Public School. In the last class, since the last class we are learning the second chapter in history section, that is nationalism in India, right? So in this already we have finished an introductory part of this lesson. I mean what all the things we mainly learn in this lesson. About all those things I have already told you. Mainly we learn about non-cooperation movement, civil disobedience movement. Even we mainly learn here about Rowlatt Act, salt satyagraha, as well as about Quit India movement also we learn, which means overall concentrating about the role played by Mahatma Gandhi. So about all these things we learn in this chapter. See that the first concept in this chapter, is the First World War. The First World War, Khilafat movement and non-cooperation movement. The First World War, Khilafat movement and non-cooperation movement. About these three things we learn. First one, see, what do we learn first? First World War. First World War, then Khilafat movement. Then what do we learn here? Khilafat movement and then non-cooperation. And then here we learn about non-cooperation movement. So about all these things we learn in this concept, Khilafat and non-cooperation movement. About these also we are learning first, which means these are all interconnected. First World War, Khilafat and non-cooperation movement, these are all interconnected, connected one to another. Then how we will learn now? Say, the years after 1919. The years after 1919, I mean after 1919, what happened? Say, the national movement began to spread to the new areas, new regions of the India, as well as the national movement began to include the new social groups. I mean new social groups also began to participate in the national movement. But why those new groups began to participate in the national movement? There is a reason. We will learn in this chapter about those reasons also. Even see, after 1919 what happened? After 1919, the modes of struggles also varied. I mean new ways of fighting, new ways of struggling against the colonialism, against the British rule emerged. New ways of fighting, new ways of struggles were also emerged in India after the years 1990. See what happened first of all, see the First World War. You know that the period of First World War is 1914 to 1918, right? Is it? So see, the First World War created a new economic and political situation. The First World War created a new economic and political situation. What happens, see, after the First World War? After the First World War, what happens, see, which means the First World War led to a huge increase in defense expenditure. Because of the First World War, what happened, see, there was a sudden increasement in the investment, in the expenditure of defense. I mean in the army. So suddenly expenditure, kharch we call it, expenditure was increased in the defense. Then what happens, say, this expenditure as it was increased now, this was all done by loan. This was all dependent on loan. So to repay that loan, what happens, say, now income tax was introduced. Income tax was introduced, as well as customs duties were also increased. Customs duties were also increased. I mean customs duties means, you know that, exporting or importing from one country to another country at present, correct, no? At the boundary of our country we have to pay, or while exporting, correct, no? We have to pay to Where to which country we export to that country we have to pay duty. I mean tax. That tax is called as customs duty. So customs duties were also increased and income tax was also introduced. For what purpose? To fulfill or to repay that loan which was taken to make expenditure in the defense for the to strengthen the defense. Then say what happened, as I told you that, and then what happened, say in 1913 to 1918, during the time of 1913 to 1918, the prices of the food grains were also suddenly increased. The prices of the food grains were also suddenly increased. I mean during the time of war, First World War, the prices of the food grains suddenly increased. Then as it was increased, and at the same time British called upon the villages of India to supply soldiers. British ordered the villages to supply soldiers, and in this what happens is British did forced conscription or forced recruitment was also done. I mean British forcefully took the youths from various villages of India and made them the soldiers into British army for the World War. This created angriness in the hearts of villagers, in the hearts of various people, various sections of the Indian society. And then what happens in 1919? In 1919 to 1919, say in 1918 to 1919 and 1920 to 1921, crops were also failed in India. Bad harvesterized crops failed. When? During the time of 1918 to 1919 and between 1920 and 1921, crops were failed. Crops failed means already there was a hike, there was a raise in the price of food grains, and during these years crops failed. Then there was much rise in the prices of food grains, and this was accompanied by influenza epidemic. I mean disease was also arised, influenza. This influenza epidemic also arised, and both destroyed the economic situation or the prosperity of India. We can say what happens if both together, crops fail, influenza together, they have destroyed. What happens according to the census of 1921? According to the census of 1921, in India, almost 12 million to 13 million people, 12 million to 13 million people died. 12 million to 13 million people died because of influenza epidemic and because of hungriness, because of the raise in the food prices. People were unable to purchase, people were unable to afford those. So this is what happened during the time of First World War, and after few years of First World War, people had hope that the situation may improve, but the situation did not improve after the First World War. At this stage, during this time, what happens? New leaders appeared in India. New leader appeared, not leaders actually, new leader appeared in India, and the new mode of struggle. And the new mode of struggle was suggested by a new leader who appeared in India, and that new leader was Mahatma Gandhi. So Mahatma Gandhi's new mode of struggle. Then which was that new mode of struggle? The new mode of struggle was, which one? Was Satyagraha. Satyagraha, it was a new mode of struggle suggested by a new leader appeared in India. Who was that new leader? Mahatma Gandhi. His new mode of struggle was Satyagraha. Which one? Satyagraha. So about the Satyagraha we will learn in the next class. Thank you. Jai Hind.